discussion of the Theotokos, then we come to the Nativity. And the first hymn that I have out there for you, these are from the Feast of the Nativities. And there are two hymns, and they are a pair. Okay? And they are the glories of the first and the third hour. The tone 8 is the first hour, the tone 3 is the third hour, excuse me. And they discuss Joseph's contemplation, sorrow, and subsequent acceptance about the Virgin Mary, whom he has just found out is now with child. So the first hymn expands upon an episode written in the Gospel of James, which is what the stories of the Theotokos are taken from. And it was written around the mid-2nd century. And the text recounts the birth of the Theotokos and the promise of her parents to entrust her to the temple and her childhood there. And there's a quote, "Mary was in the temple of the Lord as a dove that is nurtured." And it discusses her betrothal to Joseph. And according to this gospel, the priest entrusted the 12-year-old virgin to Joseph despite his protestations. He said, "I already have 2 sons. I'm an old man, but she is a girl, lest I become the laughingstock to the children of Israel." So he did not want to take Mary. Following a miraculous sign from God, Joseph takes her in, and then he immediately leaves. He has to go work on different buildings and different things like that. And then he returns about 6 months later, only to find that the virgin is now with child. And he is dismayed, and literally, it quotes, as in the hymn, as in the gospel, he is sore afraid. And he wept bitterly, saying, "With what face shall I look upon the Lord my God? And what prayer shall I make about this maiden? Because I received her, a virgin, out of the temple of the Lord, and I have watched over her." That part of that is a direct line that the hymnographers put in this hymn. Who is it that has hunted me down? Who has done this evil thing in my house and defiled this virgin? Has not the history of Adam been repeated in me? For just as Adam was in the hour of his singing praise, and the serpent came and found Eve alone and completely deceived her, so it has happened to me also. He then chastises the Virgin Mary. "O thou who was cared for by God, why hast thou done this? Thou hast forgotten the Lord thy God, thou who didst receive food from the hand of the angel." And he continues to ponder and contemplate this. And he has a difficult time understanding. And this is what the first hymn discusses. He is pondering and contemplating what in the world is happening. What happened? How is she with child? She's a virgin. How could she be with anyone? I left, I come back, and she's like this. And so this is reflected in this episode as you see Joseph in the lower left-hand corner, who is in deep contemplative thought, discussing with the representation of the devil, who, if the picture was any clearer, has a crooked staff in this icon. He does not lead with a straight staff, it's a crooked one. The second hymn goes on to greatly expands on the Gospel of James, and it says the angel who appears to the doubting Joseph only gives him a very brief message, and that's depicted in this icon here, when he was receiving the message. "Be not afraid," from Matthew, "be not afraid for this maiden, for that which is in her is of the Holy Spirit, and she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." So this hymn is in the third hour, is the answer to the first hour hymn. That's why they're a pair. And the hymn adds the details of the Nativity. And it says, "Joseph glorified the God of Israel, who had given him grace." Okay? The hymnographer moved now from narration to theology. And the miracle is no longer the angel appearing to him, but Joseph has searched the prophets and the scriptures, and now he understands that it is the incarnation that is the miracle, not the vision from the angel who explained it to him. Joseph glorifies God, not in the general terms for having received grace, but he glorifies God's decision to take on flesh in the second hymn. Okay? So to use the words of St. Romanos, the one who as God is beyond being, now becomes a being. Even a little child. So, and how does that occur? Well, in the hymn, Mary shall give birth in a manner past interpretation. That's what it says in the hymn. That's what the hymnographer describes. We have held together in this one hymn the traditional emphasis on our inability to grasp the reality of the incarnation, birth from a virgin, the call to this news that surpasses understanding when they mention the worshiping by the Magi and the shepherds in the hymn. And the belief that this is a way that we partake in the worshiping, in the theological meaning, by singing the hymn and by praising the Lord. So, these hymns are sung in succession, one in the first hour, one in the third hour. And the first, again, poses the question to Mary. And the second hymn is then an answer to the question that he had before, as I described. It should be in your binders. And it is, and so the first hymn, just to tell you, we wrote this, we adapted it from the Vertopedi Monastery, who sang it. And the first hymn, it has a slower pace. And the reason why it has a slower pace is because Joseph's contemplation, his reflection, and thus our contemplation and our reflection as to how the virgin is going to give birth. Okay? How does this happen? Why is she with child? So we partake in Joseph's contemplation, lest the incarnation be mundane for us, which of course it is not. So also notice within the music that it ascends high, and it becomes, my mind is stricken with dismay, and he chastises the virgin, depart from my sight straightway. The second hymn converts to a little bit of faster tempo in tone 3, and upon different parts, especially I am persuaded, you will hear the hymn ascend high, because he is now persuaded and he is now telling us, and we are now in belief that this is from the scriptures, and this is, actually has, what is without explanation. I can't even explain it. So,